It all started with a lie. Not a big one, more like a hopeful stretch. I was unemployed, eating ramen for every meal, and desperate. When I saw the job posting for a creative producer at a media company downtown, I panicked and submitted a resume that claimed I had extensive experience in video production and live events, which was technically true if you count helping my cousin film her TikToks and once holding a boom mic at a friend's wedding. They called me in for an interview. I almost backed out 5 times on the way there. But I needed this job. I needed to believe I could fake it till I made it. I arrived 10 minutes early, took a deep breath, and walked into the glossy building with my heart pounding so loudly I was surprised the receptionist didn't comment on it. "Interview for the producer role?" she asked, all smiles and French manicure. I nodded. 3rd floor, into the hall, green room. I thanked her and headed up. Only, when I got off the elevator, I turned left instead of right. There was a hallway, yes, and a door with a star on it, and a post-it that read, "Wardrobe inside. Mic him up." Confused, I hesitated. Then the door flew open. "You're late." A woman with a headset pulled me in before I could protest. "Mix on the counter. Change into this. You're up in 5. My mouth opened, but no words came out. She shoved a shirt into my hands, black, crisp, and clearly sized for me. "No time to explain," she barked. "Hair and makeup's already done. Just throw it on and follow my lead." I didn't know what was happening, but I was terrified enough to just go with it. I changed. I followed. I entered a set that looked like a talk show stage, 3 cameras, a semicircle of chairs, hot lights, and an audience. An actual live audience. Before I could ask what was going on, a man with a clipboard whispered, "When they ask about your journey, keep it emotional. Don't mention the sponsors by name, that's their job. You just do the reveal." "Got it. Got it." I echoed, stunned. And then a voice boomed, "Please welcome our surprise guest, Tyler Ross." And the crowd erupted. Me. I was Tyler Ross now? What in the actual? I walked out like I knew what I was doing, which, of course, I didn't. The applause was thunderous, blinding. A host with impossibly white teeth pulled me into a hug. Is Mike already live? "Ladies and gentlemen, the man of the hour, Tyler Ross." The audience cheered louder. I waved. I smiled. I was internally screaming. We sat. He leaned in, elbows on knees, full talk show charisma. "Tyler, you've had quite the year. Millions of followers. That viral moment. And now this. How does it feel?" I stared at him, stalling, and laughed nervously. "It's surreal. Honestly, I never expected any of it." That was true. "You know, we've had so many people write in about how your story touched them. That first video, you remember the one?" I nodded, hoping he'd keep talking. "You standing in the rain with nothing but a duffel bag, saying I've got nothing left but this chance. Man, that broke us." My throat tightened. What? I had never posted a video like that in my life. Was there another Tyler Ross out there with my haircut and exactly this face? A clip rolled behind us on a giant screen. And sure enough, it was me. Me, soaked, carrying a duffel bag. Saying those exact words. I gasped out loud. The audience clapped. That was the moment, the host said, voice gentle now. "That video changed everything. Overnight, the world knew who you were." I tried to play along, eyes locked on the footage. It looked like me. Mannerisms, voice, even the same jacket I owned. But I had no memory of filming it. None. And now, the host said, turning to the camera, "We have a surprise for you." A drumroll played. A side door opened. And in walked my high school drama teacher, Ms. Jacobs. I stood up, stunned. "You inspired this whole thing," she said tearfully. "You told him he could be more." I hugged her because what else do you do when you're in too deep and possibly having a televised breakdown? The audience was on their feet. I wasn't just pretending anymore. I was being celebrated. For something I didn't remember doing. For someone I apparently was. And just as the commercial break started, the host leaned in close and whispered, "We're so glad you agreed to this. I honestly thought you might back out once you found the note." I blinked. "What note?" He smiled, puzzled. "The one your assistant said he left in your hotel room. The yellow one." My stomach dropped. I hadn't stayed in a hotel. I didn't have an assistant. Something very strange was happening. Plus, the rest of the taping was a blur. I smiled, I nodded, I hugged strangers who claimed I'd changed their lives. Every word I spoke felt like it belonged to someone else. I was impersonating a man I didn't know, except it was my face on that screen. My voice. My name. The applause, the tears, the admiration, all meant for Tyler Ross. After the show wrapped, a production assistant handed me a schedule. "You're due at the book signing in an hour. Car's waiting." Book signing? I didn't even have a library card, let alone a book deal. But curiosity and panic kept me moving. In the car, I Googled myself. Or rather, I Googled Tyler Ross motivational speaker. And there he was. Me. Dozens of articles, videos, event listings. There was even a TED Talk thumbnail, When the Floor Falls Out, Climbing Back from Nothing by Tyler Ross. The video had 8.4 million views. I clicked it. And it was me again. Same voice, same mannerisms. Telling a story about surviving homelessness after a job layoff and a divorce. Only I'd never been married. Or laid off. Or homeless. I was still living in my aunt's garage. The car pulled up to a bookstore. A long line of people snaked down the block. A banner read, Meet Tyler Ross, author of Stand Where You Fell. I nearly bolted. But a little girl in the crowd spotted me. Mom, look. It's him. She waved so hard her entire body moved. My feet moved before my brain did. I stepped out and smiled like I'm in it. Inside, someone handed me a Sharpie and a stack of books with my face on the cover. I opened one. The dedication read, For those who believed in me before I did. You saved me. I looked up at the first person in line, an older man with tears in his eyes. Your book pulled me back from the edge, he whispered. Thank you. My hand shook as I signed the page. Keep going, I wrote. For 2 hours, I met fans, took photos, handed out wisdom like I'd earned it. Somewhere in the crowd, a tall guy with a camera watched quietly, not taking pictures, just watching me. Our eyes locked. He raised his hand, then slipped something into his coat pocket and vanished into the crowd. After the last autograph, I found a moment alone and pulled out my phone. I needed answers. I went back to my Google search, this time digging into older results. And there it was, 3 years ago, a news piece, unknown man found dazed in park, no ID. The photo was blurry, but the face? Mine. According to the article, he'd been taken in, treated for a mild concussion, and never claimed by family. The clinic listed him as John Doe, until someone named him Tyler Ross. And suddenly, the audience wasn't the only one confused about who I really was. That night, I sat in a hotel room I didn't book, staring at a face in the mirror I no longer trusted. Who was I before all this? Who was I now? I peeled off the crisp black shirt they'd given me for the show, folded it with mechanical precision, and noticed something odd sewn into the seam, a tiny tag that read, Verity Wardrobe. I Googled it. Not a brand. A company. Verity was a media agency that specialized in narrative branding, whatever that meant. Their website was vague, filled with glossy phrases like curating truths and shaping storylines. I clicked through their portfolio. That's when I saw it, a section titled Identity Projects. Click. My photo. My face. Underneath, a short blurb, Tyler Ross, resilience figure, launched Q1 as part of Project Phoenix. Status, active. I scrolled down. Other faces. Other names. Each with stories, taglines, timelines. My breath caught. What was this? An agency that made people up? Manufactured viral figures? I wasn't a person. I was a campaign. The tall man from the bookstore flashed in my mind. Watching, calculating. Was he part of this? My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're doing better than expected. Meet me at the rooftop bar. Don't bring your questions. Bring your memory. I froze. Whoever it was, they knew. Knew I was unraveling. I grabbed my jacket and made my way upstairs. The rooftop was mostly empty. At the far end sat a man in a navy coat, the collar turned up, sipping something dark from a glass. Tyler, he said, nodding. Or do you prefer your original name? My pulse spiked. What are you talking about? He smiled, slow and practiced. Everyone has a breaking point. Yours was remarkably easy to repair. I sat down, legs trembling. What do you want? He slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside, photos. Me in a hospital gown. Wires. A therapist with a clipboard. A whiteboard that read, Subject Ross, full immersion, stage 3. You volunteered, he said calmly. You wanted to forget. My mouth dried. Forget what? His eyes gleamed. That's the part we're still hiding. From you. I stared at the photos, my own face pale and slack under fluorescent lights, my expression blank like the soul behind it had been temporarily shelved. I didn't volunteer for this, I said, though even I could hear the tremor of doubt in my voice. The man raised an eyebrow. Memory is a slippery thing. You asked for a new story. You begged for one. And now that it's working, you're panicking. That's natural. He sipped his drink like we were debating something as trivial as menu options. I reached for the photo showing me hooked up to wires, a white band around my wrist labeled Ross T. I flipped it over. In neat black marker, phase initiated 7/12, full consent locked. This is insane, I whispered. Why would anyone consent to become an idea? He shrugged. Pain makes people do strange things. And anonymity is the best sedative we've found. I stood up too fast, the chair screeching across the floor. He didn't flinch. Where are you going? He asked. To remember something real, I snapped, already moving. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay in that rooftop illusion 1 second longer. I walked the streets aimlessly, my thoughts spinning. Was it possible? Had I erased myself? And if so, what was so awful that I chose oblivion over memory? I needed proof. Something beyond a creepy man and a portfolio of lies. I ended up at a diner that looked untouched by time, the kind of place where nobody asks questions if you order pancakes at 2 a.m. I slid into a booth, pulled out my phone, and searched Ross, T plus incident plus hospital. One hit. A small-town news story 3 years old. Local man found after highway bridge fall, claims amnesia, no foul play suspected. There was a photo me again. Different hair. Hollow eyes. The article mentioned a psychologist who worked with me at the time, Dr. Nina Corwin. I scribbled the name down, paid for coffee I didn't drink, and called her office. The voicemail clicked on. Hi, this is Dr. Corwin. If you're calling about Subject Ross, please contact our archive department directly. Click. My throat tightened. Subject. Not patient. Not person. Subject. I wasn't a man recovering from trauma. I was a file. A case study. A product. And then, quietly, I realized something else. If I had been erased once, what was stopping them from doing it again? Sleep didn't come that night. I lay on the hotel bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling like it held answers I'd forgotten to ask. Around 3 a.m., I made a decision. I wasn't going to be erased again. I needed the truth raw, unfiltered, ugly if necessary. First stop, the archive department Dr. Corwin's voicemail had mentioned. I found an address buried deep in an old employee directory, a nondescript building outside the city, listed simply as Corwin Therapeutic Storage. I arrived just after sunrise. The building was squat, gray, and windowless. I knocked. Nothing. I knocked again, louder. A camera above the door whirred. A buzzer sounded. The door clicked open. Inside, rows of file cabinets stretched endlessly under flickering lights. A bored-looking woman at a desk glanced up. ID. I hesitated. I'm here about Subject Ross. She didn't blink. Just tapped at a keyboard. Authorization code? I don't have one. She looked at me. Really looked. Her eyes narrowed slightly. You're him, she said quietly. You shouldn't be here. Please, I said. I need to know who I was. She sighed and stood. 5 minutes. Then I reported. She led me down a row labeled immersion cases, P through T. She stopped at a drawer, unlocked it, and pulled out a thick red folder marked Ross, T, 01794, P checks. She handed it to me without a word and walked away. I sat on the floor and opened it. The first page, a photo of me, pre-viral fame, in a hospital bed, eyes vacant. The report detailed an experimental therapy called narrative reformation. I skimmed. Subject consented post-trauma. Severe dissociation. Recurrent ideation. No support system. Subject agreed to full immersion, it read, on the condition that his prior identity be redacted and replaced with an externally constructed narrative of resilience, designed for both personal recovery and public inspiration. I flipped another page. A contract. My signature. My handwriting. I swallowed hard. The final page was the worst. A printout of my original intake note. Date, July 9th, 20XX. Subject admitted after failed suicide attempt from Westbridge overpass. No known next of kin. No memory of incident. I stared at those lines until the words blurred. I had chosen this. I wasn't just a lie, I was my own invention. And the world loved the version of me that almost didn't survive. But what they didn't know was the truth I now held in my hands. The real Tyler Ross had wanted to disappear. And now I was standing in his shadow, trying to decide if I still did. I left the archive building clutching the folder like it contained the last known pieces of my soul. The morning light felt too clean for what I just read. I sat in my car for a long time, engine off, trying to piece myself together from the shreds that file had left behind. I had jumped. I had tried to end it. And when I failed, I didn't ask for help. I asked to forget. And someone said yes. That someone built me a new story, one the world could clap for. But now I had to figure out what to do with the old one. The irony? The lie had worked. People loved the person I had become. The TED Talk, the book, the tears, the talk show, none of it was real. And yet, the way that little girl waved at me in line, that had been real. So had the man who said my story pulled him back from the edge. Maybe the story wasn't mine, but it had done good. What do you do with that? What do you do when your best self is based on your worst decision? I didn't know, so I drove. No destination, just miles. I ended up at the bridge. The one from the article. Westbridge Overpass. It looked smaller than I expected. Isn't that always how it goes? Places that once loomed large in our lives shrink when we return. I parked, walked up to the railing, and stood there. The wind whipped against my coat. I gripped the metal edge and tried to remember that night. A single image flickered, rain on my hands. That's it. That's all I had. The rest was blank. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Why did you do it?" Not to myself now, but to the me back then. I didn't have an answer. But I felt something stir. Not regret. Not yet. But something close. A presence. And then I heard it. A voice behind me. "I thought you might come back here." I turned. It was the man from the rooftop. The one with the envelope. No longer in a coat. No longer sipping calmly. Just standing there, watching me like I was part of his unfinished business. "You lied to me," I said. "We never lie," he replied. "We just tell the version you asked for." "Then tell me the rest," I said. "Tell me who I was before all of this." He studied me for a moment. Then, softly, "You don't want to know." "I do now." He stepped closer. "Then you need to meet the one person who still remembers you before Tyler Ross." "Who?" I asked. His answer chilled me. "The woman who tried to stop you that night. Your sister." The word sister hit me like a punch to the chest. "I don't have a sister," I said, but even as I said it, something twisted inside me, a shape I couldn't name but had been hiding all along. He didn't respond, just pulled a small photo from his coat pocket and handed it to me. A woman, early 30s, tired eyes, hair pulled into a no-nonsense ponytail. She stood next to a hospital bed, holding my hand. I was unconscious, tubes in my nose, face bruised. She was crying. "That's Elise," he said. "She came to see you 3 times. You didn't recognize her. The doctors said you might not remember. But when the reformation process began, she wasn't listed as a contact. You'd already signed away your past." She tried to stop me?" I asked, my throat tightening. He nodded. "She fought to keep you in traditional care. But you were adamant. You didn't want to remember. You wanted to disappear cleanly. She finally let you go." I sat on the cold guardrail, heart pounding. "Where is she now?" He pulled out a card and handed it to me. "She lives in Millview. Teaches music at the community center. She doesn't know you're still alive." "What?" "After you signed the waiver and began the program, your case was closed. For all she knows, you died." My head swam. Why didn't anyone tell her? She was deemed a potential disruption to the narrative. We couldn't risk interference. My hand shook. I stared down at the card. Elise Grant. Millview Arts Center. An address below it. "So what?" I said. "You expect me to show up and tell her I'm her ghost?" He looked at me, finally solemn. "No. I expect you to decide what kind of man you want to be now. One who keeps running from himself, or one who tells the truth, even when it's uncomfortable." He turned to leave, then paused. "You're not the first to walk this path, you know, but you might be the first to walk it backward." I stayed there long after he vanished into the morning. Cars passed. Birds chirped. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. And me, just a man with a borrowed name, a missing past, and a decision to make. I didn't drive straight to Millview. I checked into a roadside motel, paced the floor for 2 hours, tried to sleep and failed. Around midnight, I pulled out the photo again. Elise. She looked like someone who had been through something quietly devastating. Someone who didn't cry easily. Someone who had. I owed her more than a surprise appearance. I owed her the truth. The next morning, I drove to Millview. No plan. No script. Just the card in my hand and a feeling in my chest that maybe, just maybe, the real story hadn't started yet. I parked a block away from the Millview Arts Center, my hands sweating against the steering wheel. Through the windshield, I saw kids piling out of a side door with paint-streaked hands and sticky juice boxes. The building was modest, red brick, faded mural on the wall, charm-worn and like old jeans. I checked the card again, Elise Grant, music room, room 12. I wasn't ready, but I got out anyway. Inside, the hallway smelled like tempera paint and glue sticks. Laughter echoed from every corner. I passed a ballet class, a pottery room, a teenage boy humming off-key with headphones on. Then I saw the sign, room 12, music. The door was slightly ajar. A woman's voice floated out, calm and clear, coaxing chords from a reluctant group of second graders. "That's it. Don't rush the G major, you've got time." I stood frozen. I knew that voice. Somewhere, deep in the dusty part of my mind, it clicked. Rain on a windshield. A lullaby through a wall. Elise. My sister. I didn't knock. I waited until the class ended and the kids scattered with backpacks thudding and laughter echoing down the hall. She began stacking sheet music, her back to me. "We're not doing violin today," she called without looking. "Try not to look so disappointed." "I'm not here for violin," I said quietly. She turned. Froze. The color drained from her face, and for a second, I thought she might pass out. "Tyler," she whispered. I nodded. Or whatever name you remember. Her hand flew to her mouth. She staggered back against the piano bench. They told me you. I know, I said. They let you believe I died. Her eyes welled instantly. She crossed the room in 3 strides and threw her arms around me like she couldn't tell if I was real. Oh my God. Oh my God. She kept whispering. I thought I'd never. I didn't think you. I don't remember much, I admitted into her shoulder. But I found you. That has to mean something. She pulled back, eyes searching my face like it was a page she had read 1,000 times and still didn't understand. Why? She asked. Why did you let them take you away like that? I swallowed. I didn't want to be me anymore. I thought disappearing was easier. You left me, she said, not accusing, just aching. I didn't know how to hold you together anymore, but I never stopped waiting. We sat side by side on a bench made for children. I told her what I knew. The accident, the false fame, the lies. She listened, tears silent, steady. When I finished, she reached into her bag and pulled out an old photo. 2 kids in Halloween costumes, Batman and a princess with a crooked crown. You used to make up stories all the time, she said. But the best ones were the true ones, even when they hurt. I looked at the photo. What do I do now? She looked at me, fierce and gentle. Tell the truth. To them. To yourself. Start there. And just like that, for the first time since all this began, I didn't feel like a story someone else had written. I felt like the author. I left Millview with Elise's number saved in my phone, her hug still clinging to my clothes like smoke from an old fire. For hours after I got home, I just sat in silence, the kind that isn't empty, just full of things finally settling into place. I knew what I had to do next. I didn't want to, but I needed to. The world loved Tyler Ross. The world didn't know he was fiction, or maybe not fiction, but curated, trimmed, airbrushed at the soul. But they deserve to know. If my story really helped people, then maybe it could still help them. Just in a different way, a real way. So I wrote a post, sat at my laptop, stared at the blinking cursor, and began. There's something I need to tell you. I poured it out. The jump, the clinic, the fake memories, the TV shows and speeches and staged applause. I didn't try to make it sound poetic, just honest. At the end, I wrote, I don't remember who I was before, but I'm learning to be someone real now. And if my story helped you, I hope the truth does too. Because the truth is this. I tried to stop existing. And now, I'm trying to start. I hit post. And then I waited. I expected outrage. I expected people to feel betrayed. And some did. There were comments like, so it was all fake, and I knew he was too polished. But there were others. Hundreds. Then thousands. One said, I don't care if your story was manufactured. You made me feel seen. You were the first reason I looked up help. Another, you're real to me now, more than ever. And then one that undid me. Thank you for choosing to stay. It went viral again, but not in the polished media way. It went human viral. Podcasts wanted to talk. Mental health forums started quoting lines from my confession. And somehow, it didn't feel like I was unraveling anymore. It felt like I was arriving. A week later, I got a call from the original agency. Verity. They offered me a revised contract. Leverage your truth, they said. Control your narrative. But this time I said no. I didn't want to be controlled. I wanted to create. So I wrote a new book. About what happened. About what didn't. I called it Unwritten. And this time, I wrote every word myself. No handlers. No rehearsals. Just me. The man who had once fallen from a bridge and been caught not by safety nets, but by a second chance in the form of silence. I didn't become famous again. Not in the same way. But I became known. And better than that, understood. The weeks that followed were surreal in a quieter way. Less flashing lights. More soft conversations in coffee shops with people who recognized me not for who I was, but for what I admitted. I was no longer the Tyler Ross with the big speech and the perfect pain. I was just Tyler. And weirdly, I liked him more. I started doing something small but sacred. I replied to every message that came in. Not with canned gratitude, but with honesty. When someone wrote, "You saved me," I'd say, "You saved yourself." I just said the part out loud. When someone said, "I don't know who I am anymore," I'd say, "Me neither. Want to figure it out together?" I wasn't trying to be a guru anymore. I was just trying to be a person who didn't vanish when things got hard. And then, one morning, a letter arrived in a plain white envelope. No return address. Inside, a photo. Black and white. Me, in a hospital hallway, sitting beside someone. The woman's face was blurred, but mine was sharp. Eyes closed, hand resting gently over hers. On the back, one line typed in bold letters. What you forgot wasn't just pain. No signature. No explanation. Just that. I stared at it for a long time. I had no memory of the moment. None. But it moved me in a way I didn't expect. Because for the first time, I realized something. Forgetting doesn't just erase the worst. It blurs the best too. And now, I would never know who she was, or why I sat beside her, or what part of me had once been kind without being asked. That thought haunted me, not in a cruel way, but in a quiet, echoing way. A reminder that memory isn't always about trauma. Sometimes it's about joy we didn't realize we were holding until it was gone. I showed the photo to Elise. She looked at it for a long while, then said, "That was Hannah. She was someone you loved. I think. You never told me much. But you asked me once if people still knew how to grieve quietly." That was all she said. But it was enough. Hannah. A name. A thread. Something that was mine before the program, before the curated self. I pinned the photo on my wall, right above my desk. Not to solve the mystery, but to remember there was one. Not everything has to be fixed. Some things just need to be honored. That night, I dreamed of a piano playing in another room and someone humming off-key. When I woke up, I wasn't sad. I was still here, still becoming. And maybe, just maybe, that was the best part of the story. Months passed. Seasons shifted. My story stopped trending. The world moved on, as it always does. But I didn't. I stayed with it. Not in a clinging way, but in a way that felt like closure folded into curiosity. Every so often, I'd get a message from someone who'd just discovered the story. "Wait, this was real," they'd ask. And I'd write back. Real enough to change me. I started working at a local support center. Nothing dramatic, just helping people fill out housing forms, find a therapist, get through the week. It wasn't glamorous. It was better. One afternoon, I was organizing files when a familiar voice drifted into the lobby. I peeked around the corner and froze. The man from the rooftop. No coat this time. Just jeans, a sweater, and a face that didn't carry power anymore. "Just wait. I figured you might still be around," he said. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "Is there another project?" He shook his head. "No. I left Verity." "Why?" He smiled. "Because you reminded me that stories are supposed to serve people, not control them. And I forgot that somewhere." He reached into his bag and handed me a sealed envelope. "Final file. Everything we had on you. You can burn it, read it, frame it, I don't care. Just thought it belonged with you now." I took it, nodded. "Thanks." He turned to go, but paused at the door. "One last thing," he said. "There was a detail we never figured out. From the footage at the bridge." My spine straightened. "What detail?" "Someone pulled you back. You jumped, but you didn't fall. Not the whole way. There's footage, grainy, hard to see. But someone reached for you. We never identified them. You said I was alone. We thought you were." He hesitated. "But we were wrong about a lot of things, weren't we?" And then he left. I stood there holding that envelope, heartbeat slow, thoughtful. Someone saved me. Not the program. Not the lie. Someone. And I would never know who. But somehow, that made it more sacred. Because the truth, I realized, isn't always a spotlight. Sometimes it's a shadow that stayed long enough to catch you when no one else saw. I never opened the envelope. I buried it under a tree Elise and I used to climb when we were kids. Let it rest with the version of me who needed it. And when people ask me today what my story is, I say this. I used to be a man who tried to disappear. Now I'm the man who stayed.